Aleksey Mikhailovich was the Russian Tsar during some of Russia's most eventful decades in the mid-17th century. His reign saw wars with Poland and Sweden, schism in the Russian Orthodox Church, and the major Cossack revolt of Stenka Razin. On the eve of his death in 1676, the Tsardom of Russia spanned almost 2 billion acres. Early life and reign. Born in Moscow on 29 March 1629, the son of Tsar Michael and Eudoxia Streshneva, the 16-year-old Alexei acceded to the throne after his father's death on 12 July 1645. He was committed to the care of his tutor Boris Morozov, a shrewd boyar open to Western ideas. Morozov's pursued a peaceful foreign policy, securing a truce with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and carefully avoiding complications with the Ottoman Empire. His domestic policy aimed at limiting the privileges of foreign traders and abolishing a useless and expensive court offices. On 17 January 1648, Morozov procured the marriage of the Tsar with Maria Miloslavskaya, himself marrying her sister Anna 10 days later, both daughters of Ilya Danilovich Miloslavsky. Morozov was regarded as a corrupt, self-seeking 17th-century boyar and accused of sorcery and witchcraft. In May 1648, Muscovites rose against his faction in the Salt Riot, and the young Tsar was compelled to dismiss them and exile Boris to the Kirilo-Belozersky monastery. 4 months later, Boris secretly returned to Moscow to regain some of his power. The popular discontent demonstrated by the riot was partially responsible for Alexei's 1649 issuance of a new legal code, the Sobornoye Ulozhenie. Later reign. Rebellions. From the beginning of his reign, Alexei faced rebellions across Russia. After resolving the 1648 Salt Riot, Alexei faced rebellions in 1650 in the cities of Pskov and Great Novgorod. Alexei put down the Novgorod rebellion quickly, but was unable to subdue Pskov and was forced to promise the city amnesty in return for surrender. The Metropolitan Nikon distinguished himself at Great Novgorod and in 1651 the Tsar's chief minister. By the 1660s, Alexei's wars with Poland and Sweden had put an increasing strain on the Russian economy. Alexei's government had begun minting large numbers of copper coins in 1654, in an attempt to increase government revenue, but this instead led to a devaluation of the ruble and a severe financial crisis. As a result, angry Moscow residents revolted in the 1662 Copper Riot, which was put down violently. In 1669, the Cossacks along the Don in southern Russia erupted in rebellion. The rebellion was led by Stenka Razin, a disaffected Don Cossack who had captured the Russian terminus of Astrakhan. From 1670 to 1671, Razin seized multiple towns along the Volga River. The turning point in his campaign was his failed siege of Simbirsk in October 1670. Razin was finally captured on the Don in April 1671, and was drawn and quartered in Moscow. War against Safavid Iran. In 1651, Safavid troops and allied forces of the Safavid territories in Dagestan attacked Russian fortifications along the Sunza, as the Safavids were seeking to strengthen the position in the North Caucasus. Safavid troops and allies of Dagestan, Khan of Derbent, accompanied the troops. In 1653, Alexis, initially thinking about sending the Zaporozhian Cossacks, eventually decided to send an embassy to Persia for a peaceful settlement of the conflict. In August 1653, courtier Prince Ivan Lobin of Rostov and steward Ivan Komarnin travelled from Astrakhan to Isfahan. Shah Abbas II agreed to settle the conflict, stating that the conflict was initiated without his consent. Wars against Poland and Sweden. In 1653, the weakness and disorder of Poland, which had just emerged from the Khmelnytsky uprising, encouraged Alexei to attempt to annex from her rival the Old Tsar's lands. On the 1st of October 1653, a National Assembly met at Moscow to sanction the war and find the means of carrying it out, and in April 1654 the army was blessed by Nikon, who had been elected patriarch in 1652. The campaign of 1654 was an uninterrupted triumph, and scores of towns, including the important fortress of Smolensk, fell into the hands of the Russians. It was also during this war that Ukrainian hetman Bogdan Khmelnytsky appealed to Tsar Alexei for protection from the Poles, and got it in the form of the Treaty of Pereyaslav, which brought about Russian dominance of the Cossack hetmanate in left bank Ukraine. In the summer of 1655, the sudden invasion by Charles X of Sweden for the moment swept the Polish state out of existence. In what became known as the Deluge, the Russians, unopposed, quickly appropriated nearly everything which was not already occupied by the Swedes, and when at last the Poles offered to negotiate, the whole Grand Duchy of Lithuania was the least of the demands of Alexei. Fortunately for Poland, the Tsar and the King of Sweden now quarrelled over the apportionment of the spoils, and at the end of May 1656 Alexei, encouraged by the Habsburg Emperor and the other enemies of Sweden, declared war. Great things were expected of the Swedish war, but nothing came of it. Dorpat was taken, but countless multitudes were lost in vain before Riga. In the meantime, Poland had so far recovered herself as to become a much more dangerous foe than Sweden, and, as it was impossible to wage war with both simultaneously, the Tsar resolved to rid himself of the Swedes first. This he did by the Peace of Cardiff, whereby Russia retroceded all her conquests. The Polish War dragged on for 6 years longer and was then concluded by the Truce of Andrusovo-Vitebsk, nominally for 13 years, which proved the most durable of treaties. According to the truce, Polotsk and Polish Livonia were restored to Poland, but the more important Smolensk and Kiev remained in the hands of Russia together with the whole eastern bank of the Dnieper River. This truce was the achievement of Afanazy Ordonashchokin, the first Russian chancellor and diplomat in the modern sense, who after the disgrace of Nikon became the Tsar's first minister until 1670, when he was superseded by the equally able Artemon Matveyev, whose beneficent influence prevailed to the end of Alexei's reign. Response to English Civil War. When Charles I of England was beheaded by the parliamentarians under Oliver Cromwell in 1649, an outraged Alexei broke off diplomatic relations with England and accepted royalist refugees in Moscow. He also banned all English merchants from his country and provided financial assistance to the disconsolate widow of the glorious martyr, King Charles I. Schism with the Old Believers. In 1653, Patriarch Nikon established a series of reforms that aimed to bring the practices of the Russian Orthodox Church into line with its Greek counterpart. Most notably, the Church began to mandate the use of 3 fingers instead of 2 in making the sign of the cross. This resulted in significant dissent among the church community. Nevertheless, Alexei continued to support Nikon until 1658, when Nikon abandoned his post due to a personal insult, leaving the seat of the Patriarch vacant. In 1666, the Tsar convened the Great Moscow Synod, which was attended by Patriarch Makarios III of Antioch and Patriarch Bysius of Alexandria, in order to address the problems caused by Nikon. The Synod agreed to formally depose Nikon, and also decided to excommunicate all who opposed the reforms of the Church. Those opponents broke away from the official Russian Orthodox Church to form the Old Believers movement. Assessment: it is the crowning merit of the Tsar Alexei that he discovered so many great men and suitably employed them. He was not a man of superior strength of character, or he would never have submitted to the dictation of Nikon. But, on the other hand, he was naturally, if timorously, progressive, or he would never have encouraged the great reforming Boyar Matveyev. His last years, notwithstanding the terrible rebellion of Stenka Razin, were deservedly tranquil. Alexei's letters were first published by Pyotr Arbatov in 1856. They have earned him a place in the history of Russian literature. As assessed by D.S. Mirsky, a few private letters and an instruction to his falconers is all we have of him, but it is sufficient for Sergei Platonov to proclaim him the most attractive of Russian monarchs. He acquired the moniker Tishaishi, which means most quiet or most peaceful. He received this moniker through the ways he behaved. He would be kind and friendly, but the sounds created from instruments would provoke him. Certain aspects of Russian Orthodoxy, not its most purely spiritual, but its aesthetic and worldly aspects, found in him the most complete expression. The essence of Alexei's personality is a certain spiritual Epicureanism, manifested in an optimistic Christian faith, in a profound, but unfanatical, attachment to the traditions and ritual of the Church, in a desire to see everyone round him happy and at peace, and in a highly developed capacity to extract a quiet and mellow enjoyment from all things. Family and children. Alexei's first marriage to Miloslavskaya was harmonious and felicitous. She bore him 13 children in 21 years of marriage, and died only weeks after her 13th childbirth. 4 sons survived her, but within 6 months of her death, 2 of these were dead, including Alexei, the 16-year-old heir to the throne. The couple's children were Tsarevich Dmitry Alexeyevich, Crown Prince, died in infancy; Tsarevna Yevdokia Alexeyevna, Tsarevna Marfa Alexeyevna, Tsarevich Alexey Alexeyevich, Crown Prince, died unwed aged 16. Tsarevna Anna Alexeyevna, died in infancy. Tsarevna Sofia Alexeyevna, Regent of Russia for her 2 younger brothers, never married. Tsarevna Ekaterina Alexeyevna, Tsarevna Maria Alexeyevna, Fyodor III, succeeded his father as Tsar of Russia, died childless. Tsarevna Feodosia Alexeyevna, Tsarevich Simeon Alexeyevich, died in infancy. Ivan V was co-ruler along with his younger half-brother Peter the Great, father of Empress Anna. Tsarevna Yevdokia Alexeyevna. Alexei remarried on 1 February 1671, Natalia Ukirilovna and Erishkina. She was brought up in the house of Artaman Matveyev, whose wife was the Scottish-descended Mary Hamilton. The children were Peter I, known to history as Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia; Tsarevna Natalia Alexeyevna; Tsarevna Fyodora Alexeyevna. Ancestry.